This video is brought to you by Bright Sellers. What's up, Wisecrack? Michael here. Walt Disney World in my beloved home state of Florida is not just a theme park. Spanning over 40 square miles, it's roughly the size of San Francisco. Sure, it's got cool rides, but there's also massive hotels, campgrounds, a baseball stadium, multiple shopping complexes, and golf courses. A few privileged people even live on the property, some in fancy houses custom designed with hidden Mickeys. For the rest of us, a short drive through one of the entrance arches brings us into a realm where birds can talk, princesses are real, and Mexico, Norway, and China are a short stroll from each other. For a pretty hefty fee, visitors can get a few days of magic and extremely clean bathrooms. Many Disney devotees think this consumer's utopia is worth the price, and some even dream of one day owning a multi-million-dollar home in the Magic Kingdom's backyard. But what if I told you there was an even greater cost to experiencing Disney's magic?
Your freedom!
Oh, okay, not exactly, but while Disney World is the most magical place on Earth, it does some things to achieve that magic that raise some pretty interesting concerns about the relation between magic and freedom, and maybe even nightmarish technologies of control. And I'm not talking about that weird pandemic reopening ad. So what gives Disney World its magic? Please remain seated with your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle while we find out in this Wisecrack Edition on Disney World. But before we get into it, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Bright Sellers. Bright Sellers is a monthly wine club that matches you with wine that you will love. You simply take a 6-question quiz, and then the Bright Sellers wine connoisseurs will whip up recommendations for your tasting pleasure. Oh, and don't worry, the quiz is really simple. You don't need any prior wine knowledge. The questions include easy stuff like juice, chocolate, or tea preference. It'll then select a handful of recommendations that are best suited for your palate. If you like them and are over the legal drinking age, you can have them shipped straight to your door. I love that each bottle comes with a wine education card, which includes tasting notes like how to pair the wine or what temperature it needs to be served at. It takes the snobbery out of wine tasting and makes for a great date night. If that sounds like a chill time, then you should check it out. Right now, they are offering 50% off your first 6-bottle wine box, but only if you hit the link in the description. So go on and treat yourself. Now, back to the show. Whenever anyone talks about their love of Disney World, they almost always mention how magical it is. Pretty much every Disney and vacation blog has some listicle describing how the Florida resort has a special brand of magic that keeps people coming back for more. They usually praise the attention to detail and theatrics, things like background music, lighting, and stormtroopers who wander around and interrogate children. Some mention the pristine and punctual transportation systems. Many love the total immersion that cuts one off from the outside world. There's a word for places where the monorails run on time and music bellows from fake rocks: HETEROTOPIA. Coined by philosopher Michel Foucault in 1967, heterotopias are real places that mirror society, but are somehow completely different and other, or as Foucault puts it, places that are written into the institution of society itself, where all the other real emplacements that can be found within culture are simultaneously represented, contested, and inverted. What does that even mean? For Foucault, heterotopias are places that look a lot like our world but feel different, mirroring aspects of it but with a something's quite not realness about them. Places like Polynesian vacation villages, that fake rainforest in the middle of the zoo, big Hollywood movie sets, and of course, Disney. I mean, when you enter the Magic Kingdom, you literally walk down a fake recreation of a timeless American Main Street, complete with a trolley car and a barbershop quartet. Why go there when you can just visit a real charming small town? Because for whatever reason, something about it seems better. Magical. In heterotopias, familiar things are taken from their original context and repackaged, so that we no longer think about or even understand how they work. At Disney World, everything around you is both real and fake at the same time, to the point where you can no longer tell which is which, and you kinda don't care. An ultimate suspension of disbelief. Trash cans could talk, Mount Everest is in Florida, and it's normal to spend $7 on a pretzel. This might sound kind of harmless, but creators of heterotopias have to do a ton of meticulous architectural planning to pull them off in order to keep tight control over the experience. And Disney sure knows something about control. To understand what makes Disney World such a successful heterotopia and how it functions, it's important to understand the modestly terrifying thing it was supposed to be. In the final years of his life, Walt Disney was frustrated with the result of his biggest project, Disneyland. The park was great and all, but cheap motels and tourist traffic traps were springing up in the outskirts of his immaculate theme park, and he couldn't do anything but build a fence to protect his wholesome family fun. So the OG Mouseketeer set his sights on a new project. Not just a second Disneyland, no, it would be a whole freaking world.
Tomorrow, a project so vast, it has already been called a whole new Disney World.
He bought 27,000 acres of land in Central Florida. With all of this new land, strip malls couldn't spring up a stone's throw from the park exit.
So one thing we don't need is a fence to protect us from trespassers.
Visitors wouldn't have to look at ugly neon signs or witness drunk teenagers. Everything within miles of the park would be planned and approved by Disney. He wanted complete control over what surrounded his theme park too. And with all this land, Walt Disney had even loftier ambitions. Another way he could leave his mark on Florida and on America, born from a new dedication to solving the plight of America's cities?
I don't believe there's a challenge anywhere in the world that's more important to people everywhere than finding solutions to the problems of our cities.
Yes, that's right. Walt Disney wanted to build an entire futuristic city on his newly acquired land, an experimental prototype city of tomorrow, Epcot.
Possible today with the technology and imagination of American industry.
Disney felt the best way to address urban problems like poverty and crime and grungy bars wasn't to try and help existing cities, it was to build an entirely new city that didn't have those things and build it from scratch on private property.
We think the need is for starting from scratch on virgin land and building a special kind of new community.
Walt's grand vision was heavily inspired by an architect named Victor Gruen. You might not know his name, but you'll probably recognize his work. Gruen created America's first shopping malls, and lots of them. Ironically, Gruen was a socialist who envisioned malls not as pure commercial enterprises, but as mixed-use civic spaces that combine consumer activities with humanistic values. So, how'd that work out?
I love the smell of commerce in the morning.
In his final years, Gruen started fighting against the construction of shopping malls, his vision a massive failure corrupted by greed. The mall was far less a civic space and far more a place for blind consumption. A book by Gruen sat on Walt Disney's desk as he planned his new world. It outlined a circular three-dimensional urban design with a completely pedestrianized city center that had a mix of commercial and functional use where no cars were allowed. Disney also promised, in Epcot, there will be no slum areas because we won't let them develop. People will rent homes instead of buying them and at modest rentals. There will be no retirees. Everyone must be employed. So, sorry Grandma, you can't come unless you work until you drop dead. I don't make the rules, I just ride It's a Small World 5 times a day. Using this pitch for a grandiose utopia where everyone had a job, Disney got buy-in from the state of Florida before he had any solid plans for how he'd actually achieve it. It was also supposed to be housed in a 50-foot climate-controlled bubble, which I just needed to fit in here somewhere. Anyway, Florida approved the creation of a unique local government spanning 2 newly formed municipalities. The corporation would get the incredible powers of self-government the following year. Although the amount of control Disney was given was unprecedented, the idea wasn't entirely new. It was just the latest version of a company town. In America and Europe, company towns were places where one company owned literally everything. Housing, businesses, schools, even churches. If you lived in the town, you had exactly one employer to choose from. Worse, your employers wouldn't even pay you real money for you to save up and move somewhere else. They were paid in scrip, which is like 19th century V-Bucks, that you could only spend at company stores. Company towns in the US were characterized by industrial paternalism, a kind of social engineering that forces middle-class values onto working-class employees. It basically meant the companies that ran these towns imposed a ton of rules on its residents, like banning gambling, drinking, and unions. Many founders of company towns framed this as a moral obligation. They were teaching lower-class workers good values and providing them a life in a model community in exchange for their labor. They indoctrinated people with company loyalty, all the while keeping workers indentured to their jobs in towns for incredibly low pay. Sometimes their housing would even be fenced in or guarded. They literally couldn't leave. While company towns were very popular during the Industrial Revolution, they declined in America in the 1920s because, among other things, workers living conditions deteriorated, and they weren't allowed to vote or change anything, leading to massive strikes and riots. While old school company towns were out of vogue by the time of Epcot, Disney's paternalistic vision for it was eerily similar, if not more ambitious. His only major deviation from traditional company town ideals? While everything would be owned and operated by Disney, Epcot would also rent building space to local industrial leaders like General Electric and have expos sponsored by big corporations showing off the newest technology. And while people would earn real money instead of script, there would be plenty of ways to give that money right back to Disney. After Walt's death, his brother Roy took over to carry out the vision, and the Reedy Creek Improvement District was formed. Disney can now design and maintain its own infrastructure projects, enforce its own zoning and building codes, maintain its own police force and fire department, and levy taxes. It would be entirely governed by its landowners, which, is pretty much just Disney. Governing officials would be chosen by landowners. Again, basically just Disney, because who needs a mayor when you have a benevolent multinational corporation looking after you? Right? Couple that with Disney's public aversion to drinking, no alcohol was allowed in the Magic Kingdom until 2012, as well as his antagonism towards unions and aggressive promotion of mid-century, middle-class, nuclear family values, and you've got the makings of the most ambitious company town in history. Too ambitious because the City of Tomorrow never actually happened. After Imagineers realized they couldn't figure out who would live there, or how kids would go to school, or how families would actually function, the plan was scrapped. Epcot became another very clean theme park with very good crowd control. And much like Gruyon's ill-fated shopping malls, a place for consumers to give away all their cash, which, Disney is still pretty stoked on. Okay. So what does the Disney World that didn't happen have to do with the Disney World that did? The one where you can wait for 3 hours in the sweltering Florida heat to go on the Avatar ride. Disney World might have lost its city, but it never lost its powers of self-governance. It's basically the American equivalent of the Vatican, and its doctrine still consists of Walt's paternalistic values and a philosophy that requires both corporate sponsorship and meticulous design and control of, well, everything. I mean, look at their queuing systems. In Travels in Hyperreality, Umberto Eco describes how the officials of the dream, properly dressed in the uniforms suited to each specific attraction, not only admit the visitor to the threshold of the chosen sector, but in successive phases regulate his every move. If the visitor pays this price, he can have not only the real thing, but the abundance of the reconstructed truth. When you're waiting in line to go into the Haunted Mansion, you're not in a line, you're in a graveyard. And then you're escorted by a spooky maid into a foyer, and then an elevator, and then another inside line that's supposed to be a living room maybe? But really, you're flowing through carefully crafted crowd control that is meant to be invisible. The point is, everything at Disney World is calculated to control your experience, from the sewage system to tiny details at the bottom of a man-made hot spring. I mean, 9/11, they were able to efficiently evacuate approximately hundreds of thousands of people. Could you imagine San Francisco doing that? It's no wonder people take out a second mortgage on their house so they can fly across the world to visit this place. Not only can you meet Mickey and his pals, the whole experience feels unlike anything else on our planet. So immersive that even though there's no giant bubble dome over the place, there might as well be. Because of all of the surrounding land Disney owns, you're literal miles away from the real world. You'll never see garbage cans overflowing or even emptied because the trash is whisked away underground at 60 miles per hour. There are no telephone poles or wires obstructing any views. You can visit convincing versions of real countries without leaving the US, but everyone speaks English and all the streets are so clean. Everyone is happy and friendly and has the same 3 hairstyles. But peek beneath the shiny, perfect surface, and it becomes clear that there's something else going on. In order to maintain its heterotopic status, the most magical place on Earth doesn't just hide its sanitation workers and trick you into enjoying your hour-long wait. It also hides all the things that plague us out in the real world, creating a space grounded in Walt Disney's paternalistic corporatist value system. Anthropologist J.R Fleming calls it dystory. He argues that these theme parks conveniently censored those aspects of US history that conflict with white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, middle-class values and behaviors. These theme parks portray one vast vanilla-flavored American melting pot that never existed. And it makes people feel good. I mean, I get it. A Liberty Square that included the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, where women burned alive after their bosses locked them inside, might not be the most magical experience. Instead, imagine a world where all the shitty things we've done didn't exist, and freedom is sponsored by American Express and Coca-Cola. Imagine a China that doesn't mention the words People's Republic or communism. Disney, by its very nature, has to hide all the ugliness that makes it so magical in the first place. Sure, there's no inkling of poverty anywhere on the 47-mile property because of extensive surveillance, policing, and enforcement of private property laws. Disney does its own safety inspections on all of its rides. Off-property, many of Disney's minimum wage employees commute in every day from far less manicured areas. You have to go through private security, and ticket tag users even have to scan their fingerprints to enter. No unscrupulous behavior is tolerated either. If you pull any drunken antics or break a law, even a minor misdemeanor, you don't just get a court date and a fine. You can be banned for life. And thank God I'm not banned from Disney for life, just Universal Studios and all of their associated properties. These are all things that most folks in America would never tolerate from their own government. I mean, think about how many people flipped after airports started asking for biodata. But because of a meticulous effort to create a consumer's utopia unaffected by the ills of the outside world, people will gladly give up their privacy and their cash to experience that special Disney magic. Disney is also so good at indoctrinating people because the brand has essentially conquered contemporary life. Disney has its hand in almost every piece of popular culture in existence, and their ideology is super palatable. It's wholesome, family-friendly magic you're getting here. Mickey can't hurt you. There seems to be a limit for people's tolerance for this magic, though. In 1994, Disney tried again to make a planned community. Celebration, Florida was modeled much in that Victor Gruen style of urbanism. Small, pedestrian-friendly downtown areas and plenty of public space. It would have schools built within the community for residents to send their kids, community fitness centers, places of worship, playgrounds, and theaters. Like everything else Disney builds, Celebration was meticulously designed down to its manhole covers. There was a complete ban on franchises and billboards. But what Disney called an authentic small-town America experience didn't feel so authentic. Chalk it up to the fake snow if you want, or the loudspeakers hidden behind palm trees that pumped out music, but it was creepy and void of character. There were no gas stations or restaurants, only Disney stores. According to a former resident, a Cuban immigrant who loved Disney decided not to buy a house there because its sterility reminded him too much of communist Cuba. The over-engineering and Disneyfication of Celebration also made people paranoid. Were the alligators in the man-made lake put there for show? Is the fake snow even actually fake snow? What other fake things aren't the fake things we think they are? Celebration soon started to suffer from the kinds of problems many suburbs in Florida suffered from. An economic recession caused a ton of home foreclosures.
When it was first announced demand to live here was so high, Disney ran a lottery. Bill and Susan Bona were among the first 400 winners.
I think people came here because thinking they were going to be living on Main Street, USA, and, you know, the pixie dust would be sprinkled and their life would be perfect. And they wanted the monorail to pick them up at their front door, and you know, this is real life, real mortgages, real jobs.
There was a brutal murder and a suicide. People started accusing Disney of being more focused on corporate needs than the needs of its residents. For the first time, it seemed that Disney had lost control. So instead of trying to address the problems of Celebration, Disney sold it to private investors and then did what Disney does best, started again from scratch. In 2011, Disney built another community on its property called Golden Oak. Owned by people like the former CEO of Walmart, homes start at $2 million. Like the rest of Disney, the community is planned and controlled. Doors must be made out of wood, and trash is hidden in a designated area. There are several man-made lakes and a river, and fake scents are pumped into the country clubhouse. Obviously, this isn't the robust planned community Walt intended. It's not providing anyone with jobs. There are plenty of retirees, and it pretty much exclusively caters to the very wealthy. Even if you can't afford the $2 million mansion, there's no denying that Disney is a fun escape from reality. It's supposed to be fun. It is very good at being fun. But the reason why it's so good at being fun is because of an amount of tight, paternalistic control that some might call creepy. Others might say it gets awfully close to a kind of corporate fascism, where freedom is traded in for clean streets and the obliteration of social problems. The heterotopia of Disney World tricks us into thinking we're experiencing magic. But like any other heterotopia, Disney, in all its strangeness, also reveals a whole lot about the real world it desperately tries to hide. It reveals the values and priorities of our own society. But what do you think? Is Disney the only reprieve from our hell world? Should we consider ourselves lucky to live in Teslaville, where Elon Musk is dictator for life? Let us know in the comments. As always, big thanks to our patrons for all your support. Hit that subscribe button while you're waiting in line for a gargantuan turkey leg, and don't forget to ring that bell. And as always, thanks for watching. Later.